Civil rights activist and minister Martin Luther King Jr. Narration by Alexis Lewis. Civil rights activist and minister Martin Luther King Jr., originally born Michael King Jr., was born January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, and died in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4, 1968. King was a very gifted kid. He skipped ninth and 12th grade before entering in Morehouse College, where his father and maternal grandfather went before him. He entered college at age 15. He also attended Boston University and Kreutzer Theological Seminary. King comes from a church background. His father and his father's father were both ministers of Ebenezer Baptist Church, and before becoming a civil rights activist, he stepped in as pastor after his father. Although he was the son and grandson of Baptist ministers, King had no intentions on following in their footsteps until the president of Morehouse, Benjamin E. Mays, convinced him otherwise, and was later ordained before graduating. What's even more interesting is the name change from Michael to Martin. What some of you may not know is Michael Jr., also known as Martin Jr., his father adopted the name Martin Luther King Sr. in honor of the German Protestant religious leader Martin Luther. The connection from minister to civil rights activist came from King's father, who fought against racial prejudice, not because his race suffered, but because he believed racism and segregation to be an affront to God's will. He strongly discouraged any sense of class superiority. Martin Luther King Jr. was best known for being an activist who led the civil rights movement in the United States from the mid-1950s until death by assassination. Martin Luther King Jr. was prior to the assassination, King played a pivotal role in ending the legal segregation of African American citizens in the South. He also had a hand in the creation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Following that law, Lyndon B. Johnson signed landmark civil rights bills, including the 1965 Voting Rights Act and the 1968 Fair Housing Act. Most remember as spearheading the Montgomery bus boycott. After the arrest, Robinson and other prominent ministers and civil rights activists, including E.D. Nixon and the young minister Martin Luther King Jr., gathered to discuss a boycott. Handouts were made urging blacks to stay off of buses the following Monday. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 and is often referenced by his 1963 I Have a Dream speech. King's I Have a Dream speech was not his first at the Lincoln Memorial. 6 years before, at the March on Washington, King was among the civil rights leaders who spoke after the Great Emancipator during the prayer pilgrimage for freedom on May 17, 1957. He spoke in front of a crowd estimated between 15,000 and 30,000 people. King delivered his first national address on the topic of voting rights. His speech, in which he urged America to give us the ballot, drew strong reviews and positioned him at the forefront of the civil rights leadership. King was jailed 29 times and an assassination attempt a decade before his death. He was a man of justice and of God. In April 1968, to support the strike of the city's black garbage workers, and the night before his assassination, he gave a speech foretelling his future at Mason Temple Church. Like everybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not convinced about that now. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. In addition to his monumental speeches, I Have a Dream speech was notorious, mostly in part because it was his last. Some of the key points in King's speech that was the most memorable and will always be the most memorable is, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Martin Luther King Jr. will forever be remembered as a great civil rights leader who believed in nonviolence and had a dream that came true. That very dream continues to live on, and Martin Luther King Jr. is nationally celebrated in the month of February, which is also Black History Month.